What's up, gamers? This is Battle Mallet Podcast, episode 46. What the heck's Ed? For anyone that isn't familiar, the Battle Mallet Podcast is the journey of three busy gamers on their annual journey to the Nova Open Convention, playing games that they love and balancing life with those games. Tonight's episode, we have some special guests from the What the Heck's podcast, and we will introduce them soon. And as part of this episode, we are going to get to know our guests. So we have Brian and Skyler. My name is Jared Johnson. I am joined by Trace Hyde.
I might find my Nemesis on this podcast tonight.
Maybe. You maybe already have. I know I have. Jason Table New Murray.
I really thought you were both my rivals, but hey.
Not anymore.
No.
So from the What the Heck's podcast, we have Brian Homicidal Llama.
What's up?
And Skyler Omniops.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're really happy to have the both of you here, and welcome to the podcast. So tonight's episode, we're gonna do one segment where we get to know Brian and Skyler, kind of their gaming journey from start to where they are now, and talk about how they, feel about gaming and their love for Underworlds. And then we'll take a break. And in the second segment, we're going to share our thoughts as a group on the Nemesis and Rivals format for Warhammer Underworlds, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then we'll wrap up the show. But before we get into any of that, I think, now's the time to talk about what everybody's been up to. So, Trace?
There's been a lot of Underworlds in my life, which is something that I haven't said in a while, which is good. Built all the Gnarlwood box. I painted the Gnarl Spirit pack. I haven't painted Sons of Villamorn yet, but I've got like four warbands on deck, primed and ready to go. So the Gnarl Spirit pack were a lot of fun. I painted them to match my Slaves to Darkness army, which I am also riding the hype train on because that new box came out this weekend and it's awesome.
That new Demon Prince, though.
The new Demon Prince is amazing. Those new Chosen are amazing. The Theridons, while they're a little squishy, they hit like a truck and they look awesome. So I'm excited about all that stuff. So that's what I have been doing the past couple weeks. Oh, and I've also been on a organization tear this weekend with my Underworld stuff because it was in a state that I would rather not talk about.
Right now. Your cabinets look amazing. Like there was stuff everywhere.
Yeah, it was it's a mess right now.
No,
I
think I might post that picture and be like, this is what happens when you stop playing Underworlds for 2 years.
Please don't.
So, I mean, we might as well let the cat out of the bag. That's not all that you've been up to, Trace.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? You played some Underworlds.
I played a little Underworlds, yeah. So last week I played against Jason, first outing with the new Gnarlwood rules. We played Kagra's Ravagers into the Shadeborn, and that was a lot of fun. And then yesterday we actually played in a Rivals event at our local GW store, and I ended up taking home some hardware from that. So that was
the red trophy is yours.
Yeah.
The first red trophy is on my shelf over across the way. And I've also, for the first time, I'm fairly certain, 99% sure that is the first time I've ever beaten Jared Johnson in Warhammer Underworlds. It's always been a circle of death. Like I've always beaten Jason. Jason's always beaten Jared. Jared's always beaten me. And so now that cycle is broken, hopefully. We can all kind of beat each other a little bit now. So, but yeah, so that's what I've been up to. Jason, what have you been up to, buddy?
A little bit of the same, playing Underworlds, getting Nemesis decks, testing those from our library, getting all that stuff underneath my belt. Really liking Shadeborn and the new season, which I'm sure we'll get into more because they are not easier to play. They're just, for me, more fun to play. Other than that, like putting a whole lot of magnets on the bottom of models so I can carry my warbands without them falling over. So I think I've put something, I don't know, like 25 magnets this past week on the bottom of models. And then did a little bit of organization myself, new season, got to get all the binders set up. I know you guys have gone with deck boxes, or at least Jared has completely changed over to deck boxes. But I'm still on the binder kick, so I consolidated the first 5 seasons or whatever it is into their single season binder. I have 3 binders worth of warbands now, and then all the rivals decks in another binder. So it seems petty, but that takes a couple hours to do. So,
Yeah.
Yes.
so that's what I've been up to. Skyler, what about you, man? What have you been up to?
So God of War Ragnarok just came out.
Oh, nice.
This last week. Yep. So I've only been able to sink 4 hours into that, but I've played every one of those, and it's one of my favorite series. Right up there with survival horror for me. I'm a sucker for God of War and survival horror in the video game category. But this weekend was hosting some friends over at my place for just a board game day. Do a lot of those. This weekend, I really wanted to try Cthulhu Death May Die, and was really pleasantly surprised with the shenanigans that game facilitates. It's got a really good pace where right out of the gate, there's this elder one staring you in the face on this essentially doomsday track. And there's a ritual every time you sit down to play, no matter what scenario you grab, there's a ritual, and you have to disrupt the ritual to summon the Elder One to the board vulnerable for a limited time and take him down before he becomes invulnerable and the grasp is too strong and takes down the world as we know.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
What's really fun is he can summon in, or whatever Elder One is looming down that threat track, can summon in before you disrupt the ritual. And if that happens, it's invincible. And you have to deal with it and try to just like run away and disrupt that ritual to make it vulnerable, even though its presence is already there.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
Run away.
Yeah.
We described it to the players that joined us. If you're stressed, you are playing the game.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
That seems fair.
So
Wow.
Brian, what about you?
well, I was helping take down Cthulhu as Rasputin, so that was nice. Blaze of Glory. But what Skyler didn't mention was 2 weekends ago, we had a Nemesis event locally. I didn't take home glass. Another one of our WTC teammates did. Alex, he brought home the red blood glass, and then I got what I wanted. I took home the Golden Demon card for the new organized play kit for best painted.
For his gorgeously painted dread pageant.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
It was fitting. I
Nice,
was
dread
very
pageant.
pleased, but I was also aiming for a smaller pawn than Adepticon. I thought I had confidence at Adepticon, and then the Pale King Hobbies rocked up with his painted on chest hair Hrothgorn, and I was like, oh, I'm screwed.
With his pinstripe pantaloons.
Oh yeah, get out of here.
Oh, it was nuts. It was nuts. But he deserved that. So yeah, been cycling out the Dire Chasm cards, still using deck boxes, considering going to binders, but I didn't realize that I was ahead of the curve going to deck boxes instead of binders. But
Binders take up a lot of space, man. Like,
do they? Yeah, there's no perfect solution, right?
Yeah.
there's not, but
I concur.
But
The
I do
binders
the
just take
magnets
up so
too,
much.
so I'm on board with that train.
nice.
But yeah, so doing all that. Yeah, just loving Underworld's deck building. Just so many ideas in the new Gnarlwood card set that I just need to play games and actually see what works and doesn't work in this new rule set.
Yeah, awesome.
Nice.
Well, Jared, he is not the only one that may have gotten a special card.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's true. So yeah, played in the same Rivals event as Trace, and we can get into the details there, but I did end up walking away with the best painted from that, which was
What warband?
Canaan's Reapers.
Nice.
Love
A contrast heavy paint scheme, but those models are so detailed that that you can get away with spending less time and cheating a little bit with contrast, I think.
Yeah.
And it was satisfying to know that as a painter, I have progressed to the point where I can still do a remarkable job in not as much time as it used to take me.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with contrast. Like, it's another
Yeah.
tool in the tool belt.
Exactly.
Yep. So I mean, so that was gratifying. And then outside of that, so I'm actually in a binder deck box hybrid model. So our local group for now, I think our strong focus is going to be on Nemesis. And as I was packing away hundreds of universal non-rivals deck cards, there were parts of me that grieved a little bit at some of the cards that I was putting away into a deck box. But all of my warbands and the rivals decks themselves that are legal for Nemesis play are going to be in binders. So it'll be a hybrid model, just because I don't need to be able to leaf through, hundreds of universal cards right now, a lot. So I'll be able to take them out of a deck box eventually. But yeah, and then I started painting the Sons of Elmorn, and then played a couple of games with them and promptly stopped painting them. Because
solitary tear.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure if it's going to be worth my time to get them painted right now.
It's a rough time.
It is, and yeah, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just yeah, but a lot of the same, getting organized, shuffling cards in and out, getting ready for the new season, and hopefully ramped up play locally.
Didn't you not assemble some other models for another game?
That's true. Yeah, I did. I got the Sentinels from Marvel Crisis Protocol, and those are assembled and primed. And that'll be another nice, quick paint job for me as soon as I get the time to sit down and do it, because they're primed silver, and then I will just do contrast on top of that to get the metallic purple and pink colors in there, and then do some washes, and then from there maybe see if they need a touch highlight.
I had to look it up. Those do look sick.
Yeah, they're I'm excited about them just because they look cool, and it's just going to make my display cabinet look cool to have like Sentinels standing around a bunch of mutants. But they also look like they'll be fun in the game. So
nice.
Yeah.
Jason, did you pick those up too, or did just Jared pick them up?
Just Jared's the only one.
I thought y'all were going to have a Sentinel off at some point.
I mean, not to get I guess it goes with the podcast, right? Balancing life with family and games and all that stuff. I'm trying to not buy stuff. Recently, beginning of October, we went to Disney World, and I have, for those that don't know, I have a 4 and an 8-year-old, and it was the best vacation I have ever been on in my entire life. So I am making a conscious effort to divert hobby funds into going again. So unless we're going to have this Sentinel off tomorrow, there's no reason to buy them. So
fair enough. I was just curious. I just remember that being a thing at some point. You guys were talking about having a Sentinel off.
Sentinels v Sentinels.
We were. The other thing I didn't mention too that was a huge hobby accomplishment, and it really came from the event we ran the other day, is it is official that in Underworlds I have acrylic tokens for every type of token that we could have.
Oh, that's right. Same.
Yeah. Same.
I hit that milestone too. Yep.
Prestige.
Yeah, it is. Because even I have the old, and I forget, I think they were in a Night Vault where they put out those green hue tokens. Yep. So those are going to be my raise counters. So
nice. Yeah. Oh yeah, the green wound tokens.
Yeah, they were translucent. They weren't all the way clear.
Foggy.
Yeah, they were super foggy.
Oh, those would be excellent raise counters.
Just like the dice from that season 2. Those dice are terrible to read, but they roll really well.
They're rocking that smoky, misty skull.
Right?
Yep.
I actually think they're the inner part of glory tokens, but the fact that you can see through them, you could never use them as glory tokens. So
because you can't flip them. Yep.
Yeah, in terms of balancing the hobby, you guys are 3 dads, but me and Skyler are both dinks. That's double income, no kids. So
there you go.
we're more flush with the hobby funds, but I am getting what? I'm getting I'm getting married in next month, so I'm having to budget myself as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's exciting.
Yeah, and then kids soon to follow, so I'll be as we continue
Don't
podcasting.
do it. Don't.
That's what my coworkers and everybody says, and I'm like, I'm amazed with how many people say don't do it, that the human species has gone on this long.
They're
It
absolutely
is
great, but it's
Yeah,
You're
different.
right.
it's the best thing that you'll ever have happen to you. It's also the most stressful thing that'll ever happen to you too.
Right.
Yep.
So it is all blessings. Just know that it comes with a little more gray hair. So
Oh yeah.
Yep. Well, cool. So I think that that wraps up the intro segment here. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we will get to know Brian and Skyler a little more. And we're back, and now it is time to get to know Brian and Skyler a little bit. So whenever we have guests on the show, we like to ask them the same 3 questions. So we'll go back and forth with each question, give you guys a chance to answer, and let us get to know you a little bit more as gamers. And so I'll have the questions. Jason and Trace will be chiming in and asking questions too. But we would just want to give our listeners a chance to get to know who you are. And so I guess the first thing that needs to be said is that you two are members of the What the Hex podcast. So for any of our listeners that haven't keyed into that, that's some pretty prime Underworlds content coming out of the podcast and blog, right? You guys have a blog that for
We
the
do now.
releases? Yeah. So you can go over there. It's What the Hex Cast is the name of it. And I'll let Brian and Skyler give all the details. And there'll be links in the show notes for all of that. So all of that out of the way. Brian, what is your first memory of board gaming?
So aside from the usual Monopoly, etc., the first one that really got me like down this path was this old game that I shared to the Discord, Dragon Strike, just found on the shelves of some old thrift store, and me and my brother just making up the rules. Why touch the rule book? We tried to watch the VHS set that came along with it. It was just for flavor, and it was god awful. But after that, we then went to like Hero Quest or something where you had like hex tile boards, and you could see then I eventually found my way to 40K and tabletop gaming, and I've been in it since 2008. So that was what I spent my money on when I was grounded from video games.
Nice. Yeah. It's a good choice.
The interesting thing about this story is this Dragon Strike game I bought off the shelf from a Toys R Us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Brand spanking new.
Brand spanking. You actually probably bought the one that I sold to the thrift shop.
Probably. I was bouncing around let's not get into years and dates. But Dragon Strike has a sick cover. The minis and the components do not look anywhere near as sick as the cover.
Oh, yeah. That's classic. I'm
90s.
assuming
for a 1993 board game, it's probably right on par for what it should have been for that time.
I'm gonna have to look that up because I've never heard of it.
Oh, so. Video was classic because it was like you could see the outline of the characters on the green screen behind them. It was awesome.
Nice.
If you zoom in on the VHS, there's a like man Scorpion King. So like when The Rock did his movie, I had this to compare to. So I thought The Rock was amazing CGI.
That's awesome. That's so good. Okay, so that's awesome. Skyler, your first or earliest memory of board gaming?
So skipping over Monopoly, etc., like Brian, my first board game memory was in college. I came home to visit for a holiday, Christmas, I think, and my brother-in-law and older sister had brought with them Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, the board game.
Ooh.
And they absolutely wanted to bond over this. We hadn't spent, I don't know if that's fair, but it was definitely a bonding opportunity. And they asked for at least a half hour of my time. And then like if I'd given it a half hour, then I could be dismissed, and they appreciate that I gave it that much time. And I remember thinking like, oh, like I'm taking this on as a challenge. You're getting at least an hour out of me on this.
Because you were a major video gamer at the time, and so they figured they wouldn't be able to pry you away, right?
Exactly. In fact, I had come downstairs from playing, connecting with friends that were also home on Christmas break over the latest Call of Duty multiplayer installment. I think at the time it was Black Ops. That was what I wanted to be doing. Absolutely. And they tried their hardest to scare me away too. Like, they're like, oh, it's going to take us like an hour to get the game set up, but that's okay. The longer it takes to set up a game, the better the game will be. Trust us. So we got through the setup and the teach. And I remember at the half-hour mark, I was like, what have I agreed to? I wanted to get out of there. But when that hour mark hit, I was hooked. I was already starting to talk about, like, are we going to be able to play this again yet? Before you guys have to, return home. And like, oh yeah. Like, we'd even be willing to stay up tonight. And I think my older sister was like, well, I mean, like, it's a 3-4 hour game. Let's see how we're feeling when we get to the end of it. But sure enough, we played back-to-back games.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
And that might have begun my love of Lovecraftian horror. And I mentioned Cthulhu Death May Die earlier. I want to go back really badly now and play second edition of Arkham Horror and see how it stacks up. Death May Die is going to be up there in like my top personal favorite Lovecraft board game experiences. I've tried a ton of them, but I think second edition, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's the game that got me into the hobby. It still sits at the top of my favorite in that category, and probably my favorite co-op games. But could be nostalgia. The models, the minis are far better these days than they were in those Fantasy Flight games.
Well, so the early Arkham Horror, it was like tokens, right? Like it didn't even have minis.
Correct. Yep. Trying to. Yeah, the only minis. Was there even character minis? Oh, there might not have been.
I don't think so.
I think I said like they were like round tokens with like their face on them, right?
Yeah. So like the monsters were square tokens. You had these gates that were circle. And comparing it to Death May Die a little bit, one of the things that sets it apart is I loved narratively that you had these portals opening up around Arkham. And those were the ties to the slumbering Ancient One. And so if you could seal all the portals or enough of them, you'd actually cut the ties to the realm so the Ancient One wouldn't awaken, wouldn't enter our realm. And so that was, one of the ways that you could win. But if there were ever too many gates open at any given time, then that would automatically summon him and the game would flip on its head and turn into a boss battle right there and then. And that was your climactic finish. So that was a little different than the Death May Die experience this weekend, where it was always going to spawn. It was just a matter of whether or not you were going to have to deal with an invulnerable enemy or a vulnerable enemy when it did. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
that's cool.
Awesome.
So what was the transition into tabletop then?
This guy.
It's my fault, guys. It's my fault.
Yep. He has been trying to get me into 40K pretty much as long as I've known him. And he's always looked for that stepping stone to get me into miniature games. And actually, Underworlds was the trick that eventually did it. He was like, hey, like, I think that this would appeal to the card gamer in you. I know you're practically allergic to measuring tapes at the table. There's hexagons instead here.
Yep.
I think you should give this a try. If memory serves, he actually picked up the Beastgrave box for me as a gift for that Christmas. Mm-hmm. And then we sat down and started playing, and we've been playing ever since we opened that box.
That's awesome.
Nice.
First hit's free.
Yep.
That's right.
The phrase from the Lord of the Rings, "That is a kingly gift," popped in my head just then.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that's a good gift.
Yeah,
So
we dove in Beastgrave, and that was late 2019. So we all know what happened
Nice.
after that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So not a full-fledged tabletop game yet, though. You still allergic to the
No.
rulers? Okay.
Oh, that
He's still allergic to the tape measures, and he keeps getting free hits.
Nice.
Yep. It's hard to transition in that case.
It is.
So, Brian,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're interested, but I did find a full copy of Dragon Strike on eBay for $115 if you're feeling nostalgic at all.
Oof.
So,
That would be
with videotape included. Full
I'd have to-
VHS. They say they're quote unquote painted as well, and they're not painted very well. So
I might take a look at it, but I like I said, we didn't even look at the rule book, so I don't actually know how the game plays.
That's awesome.
Not
Man.
worth it.
I think that's my favorite part of that story.
Yeah,
Like that's classic, like young, like,
yes.
oh, look at this thing. Let's just play it. I'm pretty sure my brother and I did that with Battle Masters. Like,
Yes, that was the floor hammer stage, is what I call that. Yeah.
A lot of the podcaster gamers that I see for 40K, they got in with like Space Crusade,
Yeah.
and I'm like such a sci-fi nerd that I'm like, oh, why couldn't I have found that? But
here you are. So, favorite game, I think, at this point is Underworlds. Yes.
Yes, absolutely on this side.
Yeah.
40K is still my main squeeze.
Okay.
Underworlds definitely is probably what I play more of though.
Okay.
Obviously you can play it a lot quicker. And it really allows me to play casually and competitively and get that competitive edge out rather than spending 3 hours at a 40K table
Yeah.
trying to sweat it out and then being met with failure.
Fair.
What in the current edition of 40K? What's your favorite thing?
Chaos. I'm just chaos through and through.
Just like
Yes.
Undivided or like full Bellicor. Like you've got legionaries and demons, or
I've got Black Legion, Alpha Legion, Death Guard, World Eaters, Emperor's Children, you name it. Like when Emperor's Children come out, I'm gonna go full hog into that one. That's gonna be bad. Like,
World Eaters too, I'm assuming.
yeah, Angron's gonna be coming in. I dabble in a lot, but Emperor's Children are gonna be the one I go full bore into. But all kinds of chaos. The chaos is basically what I play in Underworlds. Although these two, after we cracked open the Beast Great box, I got gifted because we do like a Friendsmas Secret Santa. I got gifted Zarbag's Gets because they're not chaos and they're the most squishy faction, and I taught them.
yeah,
I taught them to fear the Snurk.
Absolutely.
whirling ball.
Yeah,
worthy to be feared.
Unfortunate for my friend or other co-podcaster Josh, I finally got him into the tabletop with Zinch and Thousand Suns, and so when we got into Underworlds, he's like, Eyes of Nine, like.
He tried so hard.
Yeah.
So did Jason.
I still do.
Davey dusts them off every once in a while just to show us that he can school us any day with those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He came in one day and we were just like, okay, like you're going to go easy on us. And he beat both of our butts so
we were
hard.
heckling him so hard. We hadn't seen him the entire pandemic. We finally get together and we're like, what'd you bring? And he's like, Eyes of Nine. And we started laughing at him. And we're like, oh, okay. What else did you bring? And he's like, well, I had another warband with me, but now it's Eyes of Nine.
That's awesome. So, Brian, what's your favorite warband? Like, what is your favorite of all time in Underworlds?
I've been playing Dread Pageant the most. I gotta shout out though to the Crimson Court because that's just a pack of special characters. Model wise, I think that's the best. But my favorite warband, I gotta say, is the Skittershanks Claw pack because it's got my fiance to play.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
there you go.
She's always grown up with pet rats, and so she got in with the ratty band, and they're sick models as well.
That's awesome. That they are.
All right, Skyler, favorite warband?
It is Skaith's Wild Hunt.
Yes.
They were my first love. They were the side of the box I was excited to play. I've always had a thing for Elvish factions, so every single one of those has continued to grab my attention. I had a brief stint there where I grabbed Headcracker's Mad Mob. Well, I wouldn't quite call it brief, but they also have pointy ears, as Brian and Josh made sure to point out to me that I can't get away from them pointy ears. But I think my favorite one to play thus far has actually been Elethane Soul Raid.
Okay.
Yeah. But Scathe will forever be my favorite, and I actually brought it to the Nemesis tournament recently,
Nice.
which
Cool.
I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit later.
Jared,
Yeah,
it sounds like a mirror dimension of you and me, basically.
It really is. Yeah. Except for I'm not allowed to play Soul Raid.
No.
No.
No, you are not.
No, I played Soul Raid was it twice in
Yes.
person with Jason?
Yes.
And we both determined that I'm not allowed to play that warband because I can't. My brain cannot
Can't keep track of
manage
the
the
soul
shoal token.
token.
Yeah.
I can't do it. It just doesn't. It's not there. I can't compute. Does not compute.
3
Skyler.
activations later.
I'm
I
like,
forgot that.
dang it, the shoal token. I'm like, yeah.
Every time I think I'm like finally leveled up and I'm getting big brain plays, he does something nasty with the fish.
Yeah.
Whoa, family show. Family show.
It's a 4-letter word, fish.
It is 4-letter F word even.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
Get the squeak hammer out.
yep. Being such diehard Underworlds players, I think I know the answer to this question, but Brian, what's your favorite format to play?
It's championship, but I do really appreciate Nemesis and enjoy playing it. It brings a new dynamic to deck building considerations. So I don't have any loss of interest when playing Nemesis either. It was a lot of fun. Even Arena Mortis was a lot of fun.
oh, Arena Mortis.
Yeah, we like some Arena Mortis.
that is
Yeah.
that is beer and pretzels Underworlds right there.
You guys know how
Absolutely.
broken the monkey is from the Buccaneers.
Oh, I have no doubt. I have no doubt he's busted.
Yeah, Josh busted the game with them.
My favorite was when Gerard played the Squig. That like when we played
Yeah.
Rita Morris and he played the Squig. It was hilarious.
Just one of the ones out of the gets, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
oh boy.
So
Oh, that's awesome.
that's great. Skyler, you championship all day, every day?
All day, every day.
Okay.
However, I like what Brian said there. I have a lot of respect for like the 3 main formats right now, right? Rivals, Nemesis, and Championship. I love the just the onboard ladder that's there, and like the level of depth that you want to get into the game, starting again at Rivals. I just really like that we have those tiers, and that they're going to help continue to grow the game.
Yeah.
However,
more.
Alliance is my bucket list format. I want to play that so bad. So
you like the team aspect of it, huh?
absolutely. So I really dig the deck building, and I love restrictions. So Nemesis helps tick that or scratch that itch for me. However, if I could jump into an alliance format where 3 people can't have duplicates across all 3 decks, I would absolutely love like the conversations and strategy that would unfold from, okay, one of us gets great strength, where's that going, as well as all the other fun cards and staples that the team would be looking to pilot field.
We had fun with that the one time we did that team tournament online during COVID.
Yeah.
Kind of strategizing with that. That was fun.
Yep. And for us, I think we always had somebody was the heel. Like, okay, 2 people get overpowered decks, and then we throw the heel at what we think is the strongest opponent deck.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
so much fun, guys. It was just amazing.
You guys bought him a bottle though, right?
Yeah, a baby bottle as I was in the corner just crying myself to sleep. No, the Alliances was always fun. It has always been fun. And with any tabletop game, in my opinion, like I love doubles events because it's you spend so much time playing against your friends, like trying to beat them. It's awesome when you can get on the same side and act as a team. So I'm right there with you.
I think there's a lot of space though now too with Nemesis to allow that, where you can just be like, you have 4 players, you have to have 4 different rivals decks as your supplementals. So there's still space to do that in Rivals, which I think, or Nemesis, which I think is really cool.
That's a good point.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get stuck with Deadly Depths. Awesome, Trace. Thank you.
I didn't say nothing
Illusory
about you.
Might.
I'll take that one. I'll take Might over
absolutely
the other one.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we established your gaming creds. We've established why you love Underworlds. Now I have some like really strange questions about podcasting because both of you are fairly new to What the Hex, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So like for 3 or 4 episodes, right?
Yeah. So, as of the Gore Chosen release, because we did the like first battle report for Gore Chosen. Yeah, that was our first episode.
Nice.
Very cool.
So what are your thoughts on podcasting so far?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's just basically chatting with the guys. Like we always hang out for probably a half hour to an hour after each gaming day, where we're just talking about the game, talking about our games. It's kind of an extension of that.
I would agree. One of the reasons I wanted to joke around a little bit there, it was when the realization hit us that we didn't have a What the Hex episode that we could get excited for as something that we weren't a part of, right? That every 2 weeks hit of What the Hex went away for us from like a listener standpoint.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Really? Because cool like when our episode drops, I'm like, I got something to listen to because I don't remember what I said.
I do always re-listen to torture myself with how annoying what I did or didn't say came off as I intended or whatever. If my voice just sounds annoying to myself.
Same though.
Yeah.
We are all our own worst critic, so you are not alone in that. That is just human nature. So
something I've noticed, I think when you're in the podcast mode, you want to make sure that you're a contributing member of that episode. And there's outlines that we do in advance. It's kind of the secret sauce. You know, here's the structure of the episode, things that we want to cover. So you kind of get in your head, like, when am I going to insert this particular point that I want to make sure that I tackle at sometime during the course of the episode. So I've noticed, as I've been re-listening to episodes when they do release, that I get to approach it from a completely different headspace. I'm no longer making sure that I make sure to get certain points out by the end of the episode. I actually just get to relax and listen more to the conversation. So I end up picking up little things that I missed because I guess I was in my own head.
Yeah, and that's a great tip for anyone that's out there and interested in podcasting. Like sometimes the conversation seems to flow very fluid as you're on here, but like I'm like thinking like 4 questions ahead or 4 statements ahead, or I got to remember to say this. So sometimes you do get lost in the moment as you're going through it. So that's a great observation, and I'm glad you're already ahead of the game.
When you've got a thesis rant ready to go and you're just like, let me, no.
You're sitting there holding your note cards, just waiting for your time to come.
And Phil and Davey make it look so easy. We want to make sure that we can stay or not bring the bar down.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, come on now. It's not that high up there, right? So
ratings, right?
So that leads me to my next question, and this one, and I'm very curious and genuinely curious about it. So why join What the Hex and not just start one on your own? Like, why would you want to be around Davey and Phil?
Brian, do you want to take this one?
I got roofied.
Whoa!
No, we started our gaming and just our own hanging out at each other's place. Skyler was really taken off with it, as I knew he would, because it had hexes, and he looked for where the local scene was. And Phil and Davey had been holding down the fort, trying to get the passing interest. And we were coming with 3 guys, and that's a pretty good surge to any regular gaming group. And so when we came in, there was Phil and Davey and two other friends of ours, two others who became our friends. And we just started hanging out regularly, and suddenly it just kind of spiraled from there, because when the group is having fun, other people see the fun and want to join in the fun. And I think that's what really kind of spiraled it. And Davey just brings such a dad energy,
If you
just
didn't say it,
wholesome dad energy.
if you didn't say it, I was going to.
And Phil does bring a really good analysis to the game, so we were getting a lot of growth out of both of them, giving advice on our deck constructions. And yeah, it was just a great place for our love for the game to grow, and the group was having fun, so the community kept growing, and we eventually even outgrew our gaming store that we were in, and we had to level up.
That's a fantastic story.
Yeah, but it's like Phil and Davey were holding down the fort since Shadespire, so like they were there from day one, so that's why we joined them.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, they are incredibly genuine, and they have like a strong personal mission to grow this game and to foster this community. And so that was something that like just comes naturally to these guys. When we first showed up to the tournament, they were immediately encouraging us to come play at the local store. And so we're like, oh yeah, we'll go check it out. And then we kept coming back because they're just such great guys, and they were constantly interested in what we like about the game, and interested in understanding if we wanted to just be like casually into the game, or if we wanted to like really try to compete in like at Adepticon and at an event level for championship. So always constantly growing our abilities and offering us advice, interested in looking at our deck lists and working on those with us. So they were always there to help us grow in the game. So when they approached us about joining the podcast, one of the things that Davey wanted to make clear right out of the gate was that they would be all right with us creating our own podcast. Both at that time, like if instead of joining the What the Hex podcast, he could just push us towards, helping grow the community voices. He would do that. He would put in efforts to help stand us up on our own platform, both him and Phil, whether that be under the Mortal Realms, which is like the parent organization that they fall under, or the umbrella. They're a part of that network, the Mortal Realms network. So he was interested in getting us out there, getting our enthusiasm out there, and whether that was joining the What the Hex podcast or pushing us towards doing our own thing.
Just adding more voices to the Underworld's scene, really,
and
globally.
They wanted to let us know that there would be no hard feelings if we ever decided that we did want to go off and do a side project instead. But all of that preamble wasn't necessary. It's all heartwarming to hear, but when Davey and Phil invited us onto the podcast, we couldn't say yes fast enough. We wanted to be a part of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. We just want to see the game grow, and we wanted to contribute and hopefully be a positive force for that.
And that's awesome. Like that cannot be said better. I've never met Davey or Phil personally, like in person. I've definitely talked to Davey for however many years now, like 4 years or whatever, via online messaging. And that sums it up perfectly. Like Davey has always been a calming force in this community, like approaches a very even keel, the very dad like, and I think Phil, for those that haven't listened to that podcast, Phil has a very analytical mind and analyzes the game very, very well. So I'm very happy that you guys found a home and that you're part of that podcast. More importantly, I'm very, very happy to have that podcast be part of our community because it is such a driving force from championship community and then just really what the Underworld's community is all about, building the game. So thank you both for sharing.
Yeah.
And
if we don't talk positively about them, we'll get fired.
Yeah, right. Okay. Your salary will go to zero.
That's right. 20% pay cut right there.
All right. From all that deep stuff, the last question I have from Get to Know You is, we'll start with Skyler this time. So if you could add any like faction or warband into Underworlds, what would it be?
It'd be more elves.
More elves. That's what we need. More pointy ears.
More pointy ears. How many elven warbands do we have right now?
There's got to
A
be
lot. It's almost tied for Stormcast.
So, well, Yothari doesn't count, right? Like they're.
I was literally just going to ask that.
Yeah.
I think they do.
Okay.
Wood
okay.
elves. They have pointy ears.
Yeah. All right.
Trace had a count going. What do you got, Trace?
Yeah. So Yothari.
You got Yothari.
Skates Wild Hunt.
Skates Wild Hunt. You have Myari's
Morgwaith.
Purifiers, Morgwaith's Blade Coven, and then the Ideneth, and I think that's it.
Shadeborn.
And Shadeborn.
Shadeborn.
So 6 total.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
They're getting up there with
two
the
Dark
Stormcast.
Elf, 1 High Elf, 1 Wood Elf, 1 whatever Sea Elf.
Trauma Elf.
Are there
Yeah.
are there any other craft worlds of Eldar that we can add into this game, or
Nice. Yeah.
Dude, I keep pushing Skyler towards them. Like,
we need an Eondin warband.
You know,
no, if you could put Marathi in Underworlds, Skyler would be thrilled.
There you go.
absolutely. To provide you with like a more detailed answer, when Gore Chosen was teased, I was wondering, like, just imagining what could it be, and I thought that there was going to be a blood ritual focus. So I was talking about like how cool would it be if the blood ritual mechanic will actually take all of the fighters off the board from the Coronate Warband and replace them with a demon in like round 3, and then you just have to deal with this Mollog-sized demon just for like the final round if the blood ritual, or if and when the blood ritual goes off. I'd love to see something like that where it doesn't matter how many fighters die during the course of the first few rounds. If you can just get this blood ritual off, you have this demon on the board now that the other player has to contend with.
That would be very cool. I like that idea, actually.
Does sound very Cthulhu Death May Die, though.
I know, like Skyler is really he's really scaring me here. Like every point, I like rituals. I like rituals.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
But
Not
taking
an
inspiration
ounce of
from those
emo.
other games, like that's big though, because that introduces new ways to play, and it's awesome. I love that.
All right, Brian, same to you. Any faction or any style warband you would add to Underworlds?
More chaos. I was wanting to see a large fighter, so Gore Chosen scratched that itch for me because Slake Slash was turned into a large fighter. But I was looking for like a 6 wound, 7 wound, but I think Mollog's the only 7 right now. But I'm not gonna lie, what I want to see out of Gnarlwood is the first large fighter for an order faction, which I do not like orders, so I hate myself for saying this, but I want to see like a Kurnothi Hunter on the board for a large fighter for a new Sylvaneth warband in Gnarlwood. So the Kurnothi Hunters are those like not Tree Lord Ent guys, but they're like the medium dreadnought sized tree ents. I think that'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
That's what replaced the Treekin of old.
Yeah,
that's what those are. I love those models. That would be really cool to see.
I think
a more fighty, less magic-y, less runaway and hide elf.
Well, it'd
faction.
be like you could get an elf faction. Yeah, an elf faction that wasn't just a bunch of nimbly guys. You could mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
that would be really cool.
Sweet. Yeah. So cool. Well, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and so we'll take a break here, and when we come back, Jason's gonna walk us through or ask us through our thoughts on Nemesis and Rivals.
And we're back. We're ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, and that's talk about Nemesis and Rivals and just our thoughts and musing as we've had a couple weeks now, and all of us have at least attended one event. Skyler and Brian, they put on a wonderful event up there that was based on Nemesis. And Skyler, how many guys did you have show up?
12.
12 participants. That's
Nice.
fantastic. I'm
awesome.
pretty jealous of that. So, and we just had an 8-man Rivals event here this past weekend at the local GW store. I call it 8-man, but they kicked me out halfway through, so it really went down to 6. Now we had a
You
drop.
kicked yourself out.
Correct.
I did.
Yes,
That's okay.
It's a self-imposed kicking. That's what just happened.
So, but we did have 8 people show up, and we've gotten, as Battle Mal, we've gotten a number of Nemesis games in. So, just thought it would be a really good time to get everyone's thoughts on the format. So, Brian, 12 participants. Like, how did you feel the event went from a Nemesis standpoint? Was it fair? Was it engaging enough as a championship player for you to have fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it lends itself really well to allowing for people who've been playing. Like, we have a weekly league. We always play, and we switch between. We have the Nemesis event coming up, so everybody pivots to trying Nemesis decks, and it really lends itself to those of us that show up week by week and can go to that, as well as somebody who's just like, I just bought Gnarlwood and I have the Nemesis box, so I'm just gonna try it out. We have a friend who's been dabbling like that, who only has been interested at the Rivals Plus / Nemesis level, and he came out and he joined in. We also had another player who showed up for Skyler, Ben. Shout out to Ben. Like, he showed up for like 3 or 4 weeks and at the weekly event nights, and then played in his first event.
Yep.
The man, very self-propelled, doubted or did not take our warnings and brought Eyes of the Nine with Deadly Depths.
And had an absolute blast.
He had a blast, but that man has been self-propelled, and kudos to him. Like, that's the kind of energy we love to see. And we all said, don't do it. And he's like, I'm going to go and have a blast. And he had a blast, but he was like, it's bad.
I understand the warnings. I had fun,
Yes.
but wow, do I understand them now?
Yes.
So Skyler, like, at the event, did you feel that it was less competitive just being Nemesis?
No, I strongly enjoyed the competitive aspect of that particular event. For the Nemesis events, this is technically our second one that we've run this year, because we ran one in Q2 for Rivals Plus, right? So we're now doing quarterly tournaments, and we were actually able to hit and successfully do that each quarter this year. So we did Championship, then Rivals Plus, then Championship, then Nemesis, and that'll very likely be our cadence going forward. But for these types of events, because the idea is to and Brian, feel free to jump in here, because we want to grow the community even more with a Nemesis event than we would with a championship event. We approach it, especially the championship players that are going to conventions and trying to compete at big level tournaments. We approach it a little differently. We'll grab a warband that we wouldn't, and a Rivals universal deck that we may not normally approach, and try to compete as hard as we can with odd picks. So, like, for the Q2 tournament, I brought the Godsworn Illusionists, as I dubbed them. And I may never touch the Godsworn Hunt ever again.
Don't you talk ill, Godsworn, now. Come on.
But I had a lot of fun doing it. I definitely went 0-4 that day. But
yeah, I think that Nemesis definitely has play for competitive events. Like, you can definitely play a competitive Nemesis event
for sure.
You will find that there will be combinations where the biggest problem I would say that you might find is a new player not knowing which decks pair well. Might just be like, I'm going to take Illusory Might and Gore Chosen, and it's like that is not the best combination that you could have chosen. I just hope that you still enjoy the game enough to come back. Like, so if you're just picking a map at random and not doing any sort of test, you can find yourself in a bad spot. But you could also find yourself in a spot where we didn't actually have one of these show up, but we had a Gnarl Spirit player bring. What did he bring? Illusory Might? Or
Yeah,
did he
Illusory
bring?
Might.
Yeah. So not what we feared, which was Gnarl Spirit and Tooth and Claw showing up, but he brought Illusory Might, and that was a conscious choice on his part. He's like, yeah, I don't think I need to go both, Tooth and Claw and Gnarl Spirit.
He also
And
loves the illusion package.
he does. He is our illusion guy, and he did win the event with that. And
There you
so,
go.
I think it's a great format. Like,
I do. I think with tournaments in general, especially ones or with the Nemesis format, it's important to just put your expectations forward as an organizer and as a community as to what the goal of that Nemesis tournament is. Is it a new player friendly tournament? Then don't bring the decks that are absolutely going to stomp all of the people that are trying this game. But if you're advertising it as the most competitive Nemesis tournament that we can host, then go nuts. Just make sure to set those expectations as a tournament organizer, because Nemesis has the power to be both, whereas a championship tournament doesn't. As soon as you say it's a championship tournament, then the sky's the limit, on competitiveness.
I think that's much better said than I could.
So you mentioned that you also held a Rivals Plus format and now the full Nemesis style. Did you find that with the loss of the Essentials pack that it was actually more competitive or more balanced, I guess? Did you see more variety?
More balanced, more interesting variety, obviously there as a result. We were all looking forward to, in our local area, we were all looking forward to Essentials eventually getting pulled out of that format. We all thought it was a matter of time and kind of just a placeholder because there were so few options, and it was essentially, in beta as a format.
Yeah, and Rivals Plus was a community-driven format to begin with, so Essentials Pack was the community's choice to fill it in, because at the time we only had Silent Menace and Illusory Might, and I think they just can't come out with Maze Breachers as a patch solution, and so that's what we had for the first event for Rivals Plus when it wasn't officially formatted. And yeah, Essentials dominated a lot of choices. I think it still would. And it's one of the things that's got me excited for Forbidden Fortress, because I think we could use some hold cards.
Yeah, I mean, we'll wait to see what that deck has to bring us, but a Fortress does say, I'm going to hold my territory, right?
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping.
So you also, in the pre-show, you mentioned that there was some concerns around the fact that the White Dwarf Rivals decks were taken away from the official format. How did you guys go about dealing with that?
So for our Nemesis tournament that we were hosting, that announcement came after we had announced our tournament and had an event page up and was already trying to get the word out regarding that tournament. So when we took a stab at writing the event list, we decided consciously to remove the Essentials pack, but to include all of the other options. So then when the announcement came out that Nemesis was dropping the White Dwarf ones as well as the Silent Menace, the question came up, do we pull those as well from our event? But we felt that it was, because it was meant to grow the community, and because we were already advertising that those were the decks that people could bring, we didn't want to throw a wrench in the mix 1 to 2 weeks away from our event. So we decided that, people were possibly already planning to be there, and we didn't want to limit any options. So everything was fair game. Funny enough, nobody brought any of the White Dwarf entries or the Silent Menace deck. I think there was just general enthusiasm across all participants to embrace, the new options and see what they could do with it, opposed to saying, oh, I've got access to Vainglorious Raiders, which I think is, particularly powerful for this event. So I'm going to try to exploit that, which, was available. It wasn't, maybe exploit's too strong of a word there. But I thought it was interesting that nobody went that route, that everybody was like, oh, let's try all the new decks. So
I think that's awesome, though. Like the willingness to embrace the new, because that's something that happens a lot in the community, is clinging to that old stuff, man. So I think
Absolutely.
that's awesome that you guys had most of your crowd embrace those new decks.
I think the White Dwarf entries were terrible for helping grow the format anyways. So I am happy to see them cut.
Yeah, it was always hard to kind of explain. Like, I understand that they were a stopgap to help grow in some format, help supplement the official releases, but yeah, they were tough to explain.
Well, if the power level on any of those is higher too, then people feel disadvantaged by not having them. And to have like Vainglorious Raiders, for example, you had to have a core box plus, I believe, Buccaneers. So all of a sudden it went from, this easy buy-in of, Warband plus, one 32 card deck to, oh, I've got to go get a core box in order to get ready for this Nemesis tournament. That would have felt bad.
Yeah, I think the only one that really made sense as far as like that you could have potentially kept would have been Maze Breachers, because I think that was just the core box, right? So you could have the Hero Deep core box and pull a Nemesis deck out of that. But I think the other two required some additional purchases, including like I think one of them had basically every single expansion from the Hero Deep, the Hero Deep window. So
it's awesome that everyone embraced it. I think that the White Dwarf Rivals decks was a great way to build momentum around Rivals. But yeah, I'm glad that we're just down to actual Rivals decks now. So.
Agreed.
For your guys' rival event, did you find a lot of people just running their faction decks, or were a lot of people running Rivals or Nemesis decks instead of their faction decks?
So everybody at our event actually ran their faction deck, except if I would have actually played, I would not. So I really appreciate this question, because I think like a lot of long-term veteran players, when we were leading up to this event, and just for some transparency, every single time we go and we run a learn to play at the event at the GW store, it turns into Jason teaches and everyone else plays, right? So leading up, I'm like, oh, great, another Rivals event. Here we go. Like, what am I going to do? I've already played this. I really want to play Nemesis. Like, I want to play my Shadeborn. And then the night before, it was literally the night before, Jared and I were talking, and I mentioned off some warbands that I was going to bring. And then I was just like, you want to know what? I'm going to bring Magor's and Tooth and Claw. And instantly, I was super excited, because I have a warband that I've played, 100 times, not that much, but a number of times. I know what the deck does, or what the warband does, but now I can use a new deck and play an old favorite, right? And get a new experience with that warband. And that's what I was like, I'm even more jazzed. And it kind of opened my mind, like, holy cow, I can take all 4 of these decks and run a warband that I've played a number of times and have a new experience with it. And I don't think all the warbands pair nicely with like the Rivals decks. Like, I'm not saying you got like 46 like amazing Rivals decks, but there are a couple in there that I'm intrigued. Like, I want to run Nurgle with Daring Delvers, right? Like, I think there could be some play there, just because it has a lot of ping. So no one did it, but if I had fully played through the event, I would have. But same question back to you guys. Did you have anyone show up to a Nemesis event with just a Rivals deck?
Oh, huh. Yeah, no.
No?
I suppose, yeah. I suppose that is totally something that could be done. I hadn't even thought about it.
I did have one of our guys showed up with Magors with Tooth and Claw, and that was totally breathed new life into Magors. I'm like excited because I have Magors painted up, and I like think that would have probably done better than what I did with my Dread Pageant, but yeah, the Tooth and Claw stuff just gives so much to a lot of those other warbands. I love to see it when new cards breathe new life into old warbands.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That was also an Alex, and that particular Alex took second with that Magors and Tooth and Claw build. There was it was a triple Alex event. A fourth of the player base was named Alex.
Yeah,
wow,
that's funny.
We've had double Steven events before, but no triples.
So Jared, I kind of the same question to you, like going to a Rivals event, right? Like all Rivals decks, what was your perception like going in, being a veteran player, and then what is your perception of that event or that style event coming out from a competitive standpoint, from an engaging standpoint?
Yeah. So I think going into it, I was probably a little jaded just because, like, we've played Championship for as long as it's been around, and we had kind of dabbled in the Rivals, but to the point you made earlier, when you do a Rivals event, whether it's a tournament or a meetup or whatever, it often feels like it's turning into a teaching event, like a learn to play event, and not an engaging, actually getting a little sweaty event. And so I wanted to pick something that I was going to be familiar with, but had not played recently, and also was painted. And so I had been running Headcrack as Mad Mob for a long time, and if I had not been, that probably would have been the warband that I chose. But I also didn't want to come in, with something that was going to be like either really bad or like really good. Because I think there are a handful of warbands that just are really good in the Rivals format. I think Dreepers Creepers is one of those. As was attested by my second round game against a first-time player that I won because Kanan was standing on an objective and we had the same amount of glory. And so picking Kanan's Reapers, I knew the warband. I knew Kanan was going to be tough to deal with in the Rivals format because there's not a lot of heavy damage.
Yes, he was.
And if the Naderite can spike right, like the Mortex can do work.
So go back.
Interrupt me.
Going back to that second game against, we have a brand new player that's really learning the game with the Dreepers Creepers. That tested your knowledge base, did it not?
How so?
You had to know what cards are coming out from Dreeper. You had to know what they do. You have a squishy warband. So was that on a mental exercise on how to get through that matchup? Or you were just holding on for dear life?
No. So it was definitely like a mental exercise. And I think probably I have not played Dreepers a lot. And there are some cards in that deck that are highly favorable against
so scary
against a large warband. So they have 6 total end phase glory that they can score for killing 4 or fewer fighters. So there's 1 glory for killing 2, 2 glory for killing 3, and 3 glory for having 4 fighters out of action in any end phase. And at the end of the game, at the end of action phase 2, he had no fighters left. I had managed to maneuver around him. I had lost 4 Mortex at this point, but Kanan and Kenta were able to finally take everybody down. And I said, okay, at this point, we should walk through the rest of the game because you have options to discard cards, draw new cards. You may have stuff in your deck that you can score even if you have all of your fighters out of action. And so we did that. And then the third end phase, he got 5 more glory because he had killed four of my Mortex. And it
That's
was
significant at Rivals.
Yeah, it's huge. And so I had forgotten that those cards existed. And if I had remembered that those cards had existed, I probably would not have pushed my Mortex up as much as I did. And so it just goes to show, Jason, I think to your point that like it can change your game plan like on the fly per matchup based on the warband that you're bringing and the warband that you're facing. And so it still has that like competitive decision-making requirement, but it's just made at the table and it's not made in the pregame.
And is that enough to drive you to go to another Rivals event?
I mean, I would go to a Rivals event just because I love to play Warhammer Underworlds. But, you know, knowing that it may not be as deep as Nemesis or not nearly as deep as Championship when it comes to the deck building, there's still enough there that it's an engaging format. It's still fun to play. It's still playing with my plastic war dollies and shuffling cards and rolling dice. So
I think if it's a weekend where there's 2 events being held at 2 different locations that I could, you know, get to, and one was Rivals and one was Nemesis, I'm going to the Nemesis one every time. I'm happy that Rivals is there for sure. However, I feel that there is such a disparity when you're picking a warband for Rivals, especially if you're the type of player that just wants to grab a faction that you're attracted to. You love the models, you love the lore, you're coming from an Age of Sigmar game system, and they're a faction that you are already familiar with, and so you're just excited to play a warband from them. You know, whatever the reason is that's, you know, drawing you to a particular warband, I think if you show up to a Rivals tournament, you could learn, unfortunately, that warband just simply is, you know, a cut below the rest.
Not on par.
But at a Nemesis tournament, bring that same warband, and all of a sudden you can bring them up to compete with the rest of the Nemesis pool in most cases.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think I'm in the same boat. I think if by some miracle in the Raleigh-Durham area, there were 2 Warhammer Underworlds events on the same weekend, I don't know how that would happen because we end up running all of them.
Trace is running one, Jason is running the other.
Yeah, right. That I think I'm with you. I think that I would choose the Nemesis event over the Rivals event, probably every time. But that'll likely never happen. And so if it's Rivals, it's Rivals, and I'll do my best. But at this point now, because I hit the epiphany on the car ride up with Jason to the event that I could grab, Daring Delvers and Farstriders, and just run Farstriders with the Daring Delvers deck, for instance, you know, and just rely on the Farstrider stat block to weather attacks, and then key into the fact that I want to be in enemy territory anyway.
I do love that option.
Yeah. And I think that opens up a lot because, like, it's exactly what Jason said. Now I have 3.5 decks to choose from because nobody's ever going to take Deadly Depths, with the 46 warbands that I own.
I think the only shame there is it does pull flavor away from that warband.
Yeah. Because the faction cards often bring the unique sauce to a lot of factions. Like, for instance, the Dread Pageant don't really have a whole lot going on their fighter cards other than they can heal and Glazette's on guard. But all of their Slaneshi like fluff and what they do as a faction is in their power cards.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, you definitely lose flavor. But if this is the reset for Underworlds in these formats, I think that we're driving home the point that if everything from here going forward follows this format and is very level set, right? Like if each rivals deck and rivals deck for their warband are similar, you're going to end up with a point where even going to a rivals event is pretty competitive. And I don't think it'll ever be 100%. There's too many damn warbands, but it could be just as balanced as championship, because this is not championship. Like, you know, there's like 10 warbands that dominate the scene every season. So question for you, Trace, because you're the returning player to a rivals event, like easy to pick up. You went out there, you rolled some dice. Was it as engaging and as fun as your previous experience with championship a couple seasons ago?
So I think I've said this to you guys before, but it might have been to somebody else when we were at the event, but it taps into a different part of your brain. With championship, there is a lot of cognitive load that's spent well before you even get to the event, right? So you're trying to figure out, you're tuning your deck, you're trying to figure out how to make that deck as optimized as possible and reduce your deficiencies as much as possible. With Rivals and Nemesis, since your card pool is so significantly decreased, you're tapping into a different part of your brain, which is, I know I have deficiencies, and how do I work around those deficiencies? And it still scratches that itch, because you now have to problem solve not only your warband, but your opponent at the same time. Whereas like in championship, you've done as much tuning as possible to make sure that you don't have to worry about your warband. It just works as much as possible. But as a returning player, I appreciate that, because I know that my opponent has the same deficiency as I do. Right? So if I can overcome my deficiencies better than my opponent, then that, I think that is a quality to the game that has been not missing, but it takes a level of skill to overcome deficiencies, just as it takes a level of skill to craft your deck to prevent those deficiencies from even happening in the first place. So I appreciate it, and I felt like all of my games were fun and competitive, because you can't just rely, like, you're not going to always have that +1 dice or that card that you rely on for this one thing that you want to try and do. So I think that it provides an opportunity to new players to grow more in the game, because they have to learn about their warband, and then they also have to figure out how to overcome those holes for themselves. And then the rivals decks that you can supply with Nemesis as well can bridge that gap, but they're not going to do it like championship was. And it doesn't come with the added financial cost or the additional, like I said, cognitive load prior to your event altogether, which is what, like, I got behind, and I felt like I was never able to catch up after that point. So that's kind of my thoughts on why I think Rivals and Nemesis are both very valid and competitive formats, just because you can place handicaps on yourself by picking a warband that intentionally has more faults, to be like, okay, I really feel like I really want to stretch this brain of mine out and see how I can do against some of these more tuned Rivals decks.
There's only one person that plays as Toulouse here, and that's me. Okay. Like, so that was a really long, like, trying to get to this point, that I witnessed firsthand at our event on Saturday, is the person playing Nighthaunt, or I'm sorry, Dreepers Creepers, was Brian. And Brian was brand new, like, walked in, like, I think he had one other game under his belt from when we started playing. And we would all agree that is a really good Rivals deck, right?
It's very good.
It's very good. And at the end of the event, he bought the starter set. So like he had so much fun coming in, learning the game, having that little overpowered, not overpowered, but finer tuned rivals deck, right? It sold the box. So, and we, out of all the events we have hosted, that event sold 5 different items of Warhammer Underworlds. Most of them like season kits, some of them war bands. So it was highly lucrative for the shop. It seems like we have a bunch of people that are showing up tomorrow for our normal meetup. So it achieved its objective. So I go back to my last point that I made when we were talking with Brian. Like, how do you think someone that showed up at a Nemesis event would do with some of the top rivals decks warbands like Dreepers Creepers, like Gnarl Spirit Pack? Would it be a good time for them?
I think yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, it would. I 100% think so.
Because we all make mistakes when we're making a championship deck and we're playing the game, and someone was like, "Why did I think this would ever work?"
Yeah.
So it's not like championship just means the decks in a championship event are just going to beat the pants off of a Nemesis deck. Like, we all come up with crazy ideas. You're like, I think this might work, and like there's other. It's like one of the ideas I thought of when we were gonna start podcasting was evaluating cards based on dogma, or if you were like, this could work, or like maybe hunger will be something. But championship isn't guaranteed to be overpowered over Nemesis. I think a Nemesis deck could do just fine, and depending on the combination, Wraith Creepers, Gnarl Spirit, Tooth and Claw, there's all kinds of things. I had my own experience with Wraith Creepers where he put Beast Caller onto the Patrician, and so he was making music and pushing dudes all around the board, and it was, talk about mental load. I could not fathom. He was like, I'm going to push here, and then I'm going to push here. I was like, I think that's how it works. Like, go for it.
I think the thing that always gets me with Dreeper is that Dreeper, whatever, however you want to say his name, is the range 2 on almost all the fighters. Like that catches so many people out. It's wild.
It was rough with Gortrosen.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
So just to go back, because you mentioned Beast Caller, and like let's just call out the combo so our listeners understand what's going on here, right?
Oh, sure.
So Beast Caller is when a savage friendly fighter is the target of an attack action, this fighter is supporting that fighter. Reaction: after a savage fighter is pushed, other than by this reaction, push that fighter 1 hex towards this fighter. So the drummer beats the drum on a savage fighter. You push the fighter normally, and then you react and push them again. So that's a lot of movement.
Especially for a range 2 fighter.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely, all of that. But the other thing to point out is I was also running Tooth and Claw, so I was running Savage Tech. But you as the Dreppers player bring Tooth and Claw. You can the other fighters are also considered savage when they meet those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he could push his guys in accordance with Beast Caller based on my fighters being savage. So he could push his fighters closer to mine.
Yeah, it says after a savage fighter is pushed other than by this reaction. So like if you drive back an enemy savage fighter, then you can then push them another hex.
He was doing all kinds of things to me. And I was just like, oh, I'm still at range 2 with my range 1 fighters against all the pokey pikes from the creepers.
That's an awesome combo. So that leads us to our next question. What is your favorite warband deck combination, or the craziest combination you saw in Nemesis?
I'll jump in with a crazy one, and it's good. Shout out to a local of ours named Taylor. He is playing around with a Drom Daring Delvers deck right now, or sorry, Gore Chosen Daring Delvers deck right now, and he doesn't have any of the exploration scoring cards in there. That's not what it's there for. He's doubling down on domains and ping, and and scoring off of both, and it's gross. It's great. He was like, I really want to try this. I think I've got something here. Not sure, but like, just let's sit down and play. And that particular game, he beat me like 16-8. And what was I running? I was running, Hexbane. Oh, I was so sad in that particular game. I was running Hexbane Hunters. And I started the game off with 2 surges in my hand. One was get a kill after they've taken one of your fighters out of action. And then the other one was a little bit of Tooth and Claw Spice I was bringing, which was the Savage Exemplar, I think is what that card's called, where your fighter has taken a second or subsequent fighter out of action. So your leader is the cause of a second one going out during the course of the game. So I held those from round 1 through round 3. Both of those. In round 1, he couldn't land any attacks against me, but I was able to take out Dad Bod. So I wasn't able to score the waiting card, he's taking one of mine out and here's the revenge kill. There's a point for me. Nope. I killed Dad Bod too early. So then it was just Drom and the Gore Hulk left. And I got Drom down to 1 health. And then he had the domain in play where after a charge, doesn't matter if it's his fighters or your fighters, after a charge, roll a dice for each out of action fighter on your team. So he had to roll 1
for
Herax being out, and got that crit, and Drom went down, and I was internally screaming because I had killed Herax with Haskell, so I was primed for both. And I got my 2 glory for it, but it should have been a 5 glory kill had he not just pinged himself out. And then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm still going to hold these. They're surges. I'll just take out the Gore Hulk in round 3. And then he tosses on the round 3, you cannot kill me upgrade on Gore Hulk after his first activation. And I couldn't, my eyes were screaming at him. He's like, you okay over there, dude? He's just like, yeah, I'm just going to start cycling some cards.
That is an amazing combination.
That is. And that's a good call too. Like, I mean, so just from glory alone, there's 3 objectives that are going to score from just basically having domains, right? So that's
correct.
That's a pretty good seed glory, let alone the domains for the warband kind of help them, really, like all train gear plus 2 move. Like, who doesn't want to have that?
Yeah,
that's I hadn't looked at that. Like, Trace built this deck for our Nemesis library, so I haven't looked at Gore Chosen in Nemesis yet. This, there's some play there. I'm excited. I'm gonna have to dabble in this.
It was a tough decision for me when I went through and was making that deck, but ultimately I was just like, Gore Swamp. I have to put Gore Swamp in this deck.
Oh my God!
I have to do it. I have to do it. So just just having those cards available and having a card that says, if you are a corn fighter, I was like, oh, well, I have to do this now. so that was the reasoning why that deck is on our website. But I did heavily weigh the other deck as well, just for the domains and for some of those other synergies that were there.
Yeah, the Gambit's in that deck. He's just running 6 domains, 3 pings, and that double move card. That's just high value.
Yep. And he's just fishing for, sudden demise and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. There's a end phase card that's going to score 3 glory for them. Just if I recall correctly, if 4 fighters either side of the field are just damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
Real fun.
I'm excited.
Real fun build.
I'm excited. So what else? What are some other crazy combos or things that you really like out of Nemesis?
I think just sudden demise is gonna. It's the one thing that's drawing me to Daring Delvers, where I just can't look away. It's the card that's gonna launch 1,000 ping decks, whether it's in Champion or Nemesis. It's like, Dread Pageant have their own lethal ward in faction, as well as it's like I as well as some of the pings in the faction deck. I'm like, can I out ping other factions? What other factions have more pings? Am I just gonna be trounced because Hadzu and Glizette can get got really easy with pings?
Glizette is such a tasty 2-ping target.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
So I'm nervous. I want to try it, but I just need to play games to figure out what does or doesn't work. Because who was it I was playing against, and they brought the pings, and I felt it. It was harsh. I can't remember what faction it was, so you'll have to circle back to me. But I don't know.
Just the
Skyler sees the bigger picture when he reads a card, and I was like, I hadn't even considered using it on the Grot from this faction, but I'm glad you saw that.
So just to read Sudden Demise, right? It's out of Daring Delvers, Surge Hybrid, score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by a lethal hex, which, whatever. Or an enemy fighter is taken out of action by a gambit. So that's where the ping comes in. And not only is there a lot of ping in this deck or other warband decks, this one's worth 2 glory, and that's what makes it a tasty treat. So,
oh wow.
2 glory Surge, tasty.
That is a good one.
It's actually essentially a reprint, right? There was one that was like this before.
It wasn't 2 glory.
It was a similar one, but it was only 1 glory.
Yeah. Yep. Because I ran it when I was playing with Hrothgorn and flipping all the feature tokens over and making people pay for it. Yeah.
And it doesn't just have to be
a lethal hex.
It just says not just a lethal hex, but also just a gambit card. So
so that domain is good.
Yeah.
Jared, what about you? Trace, any crazy combos, things that you're liking?
I'll go for the full face value one of Kira plus brutal transformation to have a 3 damage sweeping attack with 4 dice and Grievous. It's pretty gross. I'm a man of simple needs, and that fulfills all of them. High damage and lots of dice. So that's an easy one to, I didn't put a lot of thought into that one.
Just can't be part of his super action.
I know.
But you got Feral Instincts, though.
Correct.
I mean, Feral Instincts, and then they're in faction plus 1 damage.
Yeah.
Gives her a damage 3 scything attack.
But just all the dice, and she's pretty reliable as it is, and just gives her lots of options, essentially, is what I was getting at. So lots of ways to kill you, which is what she likes to do anyway.
Yeah.
Jared, anything?
Yeah, so I mean, Scathe and Tooth and Claw, I think there's a lot of fit there. They want to charge anyway, so you get them all savage. Daring Delvers and Yelthari's Guardians.
Oh my god, just stop.
But there's a gambit in there that you can heal each fighter.
There is.
Just stop.
There is.
Just stop.
I was looking at that earlier. I was like, oh, Jared's gonna totally.
So Skyler ran Tooth and Claw and what you call it, Scaith's Wild Hunt. Did it work out? Was it good?
No, so I actually brought Scaith and Daring Delvers.
Oh, why'd you go Daring Delvers
for the Nemesis event? Well, they've got really good range. So I was thinking I could easily pop over the line whenever I needed to jump on that exploration scoring. I think there were some other synergies that I was excited about, but they are not coming to mind at the moment.
Did you put
Worked
in
against
the
me.
upgrade that allows you to ignore terrain and stuff in there for range fighters?
Oh no, I didn't. I just figured that a lot of the time I felt like with Tooth and Claw, both Tooth and Claw and Daring Delver, they're going to be pulling you over the line into the opponent's board. So I decided not to take that card simply because I was just like, I'll just avoid walls on my board picks, and I'm really not going to have to worry about it much because I'm going to be spending most of my time dealing with an invader and then just sidestepping them to jump over the line for a little bit of exploration scoring here and there.
Has anybody seen or thought of a warband that is going to really dive into Daring Delver's exploration mechanic, like and score that 3 glory surge to have exploration level 10?
I think the Grimwatch would be a really fun one to try that equation with.
I came pretty close to getting 10 glory with Kagra with them, or the 10 exploration count with Kagra. I think I had like 8 or 9 at some point.
Sidebar: Kagra loves Gnarlwood.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, she does.
Her power level has gone way up.
Yeah,
with the new rules. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, she was my. That's in my. That's my sleeper pick of comeback kid of the year is Kagra's Ravagers. They have a lot of really good factions. You have a lot of good in-faction cards, strength and wounds, and all that fun stuff. And Delvers kind of just goes hand in hand with that. With me, you could also put Tooth and Claw in there, and they'll be just as happy with that. But I think that not requiring an objective token and just being on a feature token of some kind, and then allowing them to score those feature tokens and still have desecration tokens on them. It's pretty good. So
I mean, to go back to the question though, like what warband can score 10, right? I think it's going to be hard. Like it's really difficult. I think Grimwatch is a great place to start because you do res a fighter for free. The only other one, and I'm going to give a shout out to Zach Newcomb, and I know he's been trying it in Championship, and I think it translates pretty well, is Exile Dead. You might be able to get enough explorers, like, fighters with the explorer upgrade into enemy territory and standing on feature tokens. If you can just stop the bleed, because in Nemesis, they bleed a lot of glory. So,
yeah, I could see that too.
I'm going to throw one more out there.
All right, here we go.
So I wonder about crushes.
Yilthari's Guardians.
Not Yilthari's Guardians. So but like legitimately, I wonder about crushes because they want to be in enemy territory anyway, and they're 5-win fighters that will hit back real hard. So in the Nemesis format, where that coveted +1 damage is more limited,
and you just have a fighter that can.
You just have them alive long enough to get to 10 exploration count.
I think that's going to get you 9 reliably if you're not doing placing objectives, and I expect 1 to 2 of them will go down. So you'd have to be placing a lot of objectives. I haven't seen a lot of plunder either happening. Like, we don't actually have a lot of destroy the objective mechanics going off.
Only if you play Gnarl Spirit Pack and you play in Rivals, you will blow up objectives. I think for crushes to do that, Jared, you got to really leverage plunder to the knowledge. Like, you really need to get that take out of action.
Take out of action and increase your exploration count. Yeah,
that's very true. Because
the other thing too with a 3-fighter warband is you still got to remember that you got to protect your own objectives. So if someone knows you're leaning into it, like, they can just run and stand in your own territory, and then it fights against crushes.
Fair.
I do have a major fear of all the beast type cards from Tooth and Claw on Exile Dead.
Yes.
There's a bestial transformation, which has a lot of restrictions, but not a lot of restrictions that count for the zombies. +2 damage to a beast's attack action, and they can't do super actions.
Yep.
Zombies don't care about that.
Nope.
You're gonna have Coil hitting me for 4 damage.
It'll be great. 5 if you're staggered.
No, thank you. Go away now, please. Thanks.
Well, good thing we always have Hexbane there to keep them in check.
Yeah.
Cold iron nails.
Yeah.
The pistol, man. That's the
Oh yeah.
in Rivals. There's the pistol and then the spell. That Jason did that to me.
Yeah, the spell was pretty fun.
The knot spell.
The knot spell. It's the lantern that just like killed you. I forget
Deals
exactly.
1 damage to each fighder within 2 hexes or something silly like that.
Something silly.
As an action,
It's like
right?
an AoE, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I did, I did the dance macabre and he shot every zombie and then he lit the lantern and all of my zombies died. It's good
It's
times.
the Lantern
Nice.
of Vengeance. It's spell action cast on a focus. If cast, deal 1 damage to each enemy fighter within 2 hexes of this fighter. This fighter is a wizard, which attempting to cast the spell, where X is the number of friendly hunters that are out of action to a maximum of 3 and can't attempt to cast any other spell. After this fighter makes it, it breaks it. So
What round was it?
it was round 3.
Yeah.
It was at the end of the game.
Yeah. So, and I had gotten Silent Pock and 1 more out, right? Like you were
Yeah.
rolling 2 dice.
I was rolling 2 because you got Bridget and Silent Pock were gone.
Yeah.
All right.
Good times. Good times.
So we've talked about that. We've gone through kind of crazy combos. Like, is there anything left from the event, like highlights of a certain warband or a certain thing that happened that like you guys wanted to share?
How often do you show up to an event and get faced off against one of the other fine folk here on the podcast today?
That happened yesterday.
All the time.
Never.
Brian and I tend to kick off event days paired up against each other.
Nice.
So sat down immediately and it was like, oh, Skaith against Dread Pageant. We've done this dance plenty of times.
Classic.
That's awesome.
And for one of you, the tournament is over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it always stinks if you guys do use BCP or you go to a larger events. Make sure you register with your team name so that does not happen round 1. So.
Oh.
Yeah, if you put the same team name in BCP, it'll prevent
automatically
pairing.
Yep.
Today
Round 1.
I learned.
There you go. So, I surprisingly, because I wasn't sure how often this was going to happen. I inspired, like Canaan's Reapers inspired every game early, like either sometime late in action phase 1 or early in action phase 2. And I think that it is largely due to the fact that in the Rivals format, the make a choice card, like the get to reroll or get to attack again or whatever,
or give me tithe,
or give me 2 tithe counters. It's like those are actually legitimately bad choices.
I legit told Jared in our game, I was like, I know you're about to score a card off of this, but I don't care because I don't want you to get rerolls.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
they're just bad choices, all of them.
Yeah, and then in another game, it was like I could attack again, or you can give me 2 tithe counters, and he was like, "Yeah, you can just have the 2 tithe counters," and I was like, "Cool, thanks. I'll inspire now."
Yeah, I knew it was coming, but I was like, I'd rather you do that and me have my fighter.
I had forgotten how bad those choices were.
They're terrible
in Rivals. Like in Championship, people are like, sure, yeah, whatever, take an extra dice because I've got damage mitigation or whatever. I've got contingencies in play, but I don't think they exist as strongly in Rivals.
It's when somebody pops out a Dwarven and Resilience on you and you're like,
yeah.
Hate that card.
Well, great. So we've talked about the events, how great they were. We've kind of gushed a little bit on the new formats and how it's great for introductory and gives us veteran players just enough to scratch that itch and make our brains hurt. Is there anything that we don't like about the formats?
I'll start off with, I wish that they had put a stronger contender in the Gnarlwood box to the Gnarl Spirit pack, because Sons of Elmorn versus Gnarl Spirit feels bad for somebody just assuming that a core box would have evenly matched factions.
Could not agree more. The Rivals pairing specifically there, with the Warband decks. I love where they went with that core box and how approachable it is, both for Rivals and Nemesis introductions for new players, as well as just like what that core box can give you from like permutations. Like there's a lot of game there for a new player, but when the first impression is very likely going to be, let's grab the warbands that we just assembled and their corresponding decks and go forth, then Sons of Elmorn is a rough shake for a first impression.
Yeah.
I agree with that, although I always gravitate to the sucky, so I love Sons of Elmorn. They're the greatest warband ever. I also have weighted dice that always roll crits, so I don't know why it does. It always works out for me. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Another would be is I think in Nemesis, if you pay the premium price to go back in history and grab a Mollog, I think that could add a lot of feel bads for somebody being like, oh, this guy's clearly a strong contender for anybody to pick up. That doesn't mean that you're not gonna it really relies on pilot skill, but Mollog can be a lot of bad experience, and somebody might just assume that he's paywalled behind the eBay price, and could be a feel bads. But that's nothing new for Mollog.
Yeah, right. Like that, we've been dealing with Mollog like that for years.
For sure. Mollog being Mollog.
Troll gonna troll.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. For the Rivals format, I think one of the things that bums me out, so I'll toss this in as a dislike, is sometimes, especially with older Rivals decks, I feel like this is getting better and better with new releases, that it wasn't designed as one cohesive goal. It wasn't designed as, it was more so designed as a toolkit. Like, here's the different routes you could take with this warband. Here's all the build paths available to you. So when you sit down and shuffle up, then the synergies are really rough. And so playing against the new warbands who have a little bit more of that synergy, that's a positive. I'm happy to see that. But like when you're playing these others, a lot of the time, it matters when your clunk comes up, I guess, is what I'm trying to arrive at here. And this can be said of new and old releases. Sometimes if your opponent draws into just great cards out of the gate, and you drew some clunkers or some bad synergies, mulligan, and end up in the same boat, it's harder to steer. It's harder to course correct in Rivals than Nemesis, say, because in Nemesis you can define your goals a little bit better and weed out some of those things that would just be clunkers that you're either going to have to cycle or make like bad choices to get scored or handle properly.
So you mean like Wormspat starting with 3 search cards in their Rivals decks is good?
It's the best.
OP.
The best.
Exactly.
When playing Nurgle Wormspat, just pick a real Rivals deck. You'll fare better.
Yes.
Agree. Very much so.
Yeah.
No, great point. Well, good. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. Again, I thank you guys for sharing your experience at the Nemesis and the Rivals events. Again, for me, like, I am very jazzed from a Nemesis standpoint with the Shadeborn and Daring Delvers. Like, placing tokens and getting to jump across the board is a little bit of work, but I love it. And I'm excited when I can finally get my Fiends out there with a Rivals deck of Tooth and Claw. So thank you all for sharing your experiences. And with that, we will take a break and come with the outro.
And we're back, and that'll wrap us up for this, the 46th episode of the Battle Mallet podcast. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this episode. For anyone that isn't familiar, we're on Facebook. We're Battle Mallet Podcast. We are Battle Mallet PCast on Instagram and Battle Mallet 1 on Twitter. So you can find us there. We have a Discord that we are regularly chatting about the game, sharing hobby progress pictures, and all of those things. And you can find that in the show notes. We love feedback on the episode. So if you have an episode thought or an idea, we'd love to hear it. So any closing thoughts, any shout outs, events to plug?
Brian, Skyler, where can people find you?
So we are members of the Mortal Realms podcast channel network. We are on the What the Hex podcast, and you can go to the Mortal Realms website, themortalrealms.com, for all things Age of Sigmar, Story Phase, Dogs of Warcry, What the Hex, etc., as well as our blog posts and podcast episodes.
And a link to our Discord.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, so we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of AOS, their Discord is fantastic. There is conversations going on all the time on all games, AOS, narrative, like the lore, the books, all that stuff. Great community to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brian, Skyler, you guys have any events coming up?
We are having, like we said before, we're going to do a quarterly tournament. So the next one will be a championship event looking in Q1 of 2023, probably around January, since in March we'll then have Adepticon. So we're going to have an event right after the holidays, get everybody back up and running, gearing up for Adepticon.
So keep an eye out for that announcement. We'll be announcing it on the What the Hex podcast, as well as on our Discord, and we're throwing that dart towards the end of January right now.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we don't have anything official coming up anytime soon, but I know that there are several stores in our area that have gotten the OP kits. So as soon as we have more information about events for those, we'll definitely be announcing those out here. So I just want to say thanks again to Brian and Skyler for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show and to get insight from other gamers in the community, and really to just continue to be megaphones for the various communities that exist for the Underworlds game. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And this little crossover endeavor was fun.
Agree. It's been a blast.
I had a lot of fun doing the battle report with Phil. So
right back at you on getting to know you guys. This has been fun for sure.
And we'll work on stuff in the future, because me and Skyler are both always talking about, is it 2023 or 2024 that we should make a trip to Nova?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Come on down.
2023 sounds good.
That's what I was saying.
We're looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for 2023, so you got to convince that one.
Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Nice. We'll be there.
Word.
It is now official. It's been
I'll buy
recorded.
a couple of drinks at the cantina. It'll be fantastic.
Now we gotta work on Phil and Davey and Josh.
Oh my gosh, that would be just incredible.
That would be awesome.
Let's go.
That's a super genuine commitment from me, by the way. We've been juggling, Brian and I, offline, whether it was going to be LVO or Nova this next year. We wanted to do one of the two. So Nova it is then.
Awesome.
That would be awesome. I'd love to get out to Adepticon, but that's Emma's birthday, so can't have it.
I just had a conversation with my fiance about what months are we going to try to have kids so that way they don't get born in conflict with one of the conventions.
That's some forethought, friend.
Heck yeah.
How did that conversation go? Because that, you're not married yet, so maybe it was okay because after you're married, that's not going to fly.
Talking about balancing life and games, man.
Wow.
That is like.
Hey man, we talked about her like rent fair stuff too. Like she wanted to make sure that we.
Okay.
Yes, it goes both ways. It's all about balance.
Exactly.
Right. It is.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It's like you
It's
guys have been a
amazing.
part of this podcast the whole time.
Word.
So good. Well, I think that's wraps us up. So for the Battle Mallet podcast, we are 3 dads and 2 gamers who drink Wisconsibly. This is Jared signing out.
I'm going to go trudge the Gore Swamp. This is Trace signing out.
Oh, sudden demise. Adios, guys.
That was great.
And this is Skyler signing out.
I don't even know how I come back from that. I am Jason Table Newberry. Get the hell out of here.
Peace.
Go Bills.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats.
Really, you guys are sponsored by Trojan?
Trojan man.